Hi guys, it's Dr. George, and there's my clock because Melvin isn't here to turn it off. But um, we're here for Tucked In Tuesday, so I'm getting my page ready so that I can see who's on my personal page because it's hard for me to see. And tomorrow, BISD starts school tomorrow. Need my hoodie on. Tomorrow, BISD starts school tomorrow. Many of you have already started school or getting ready to start school, and I hope you have an amazing school year. So, as I've been reading the last couple of weeks, I'm going to finish my Read to Me book of fairy tales written and illustrated by Michael Hague. Permission granted by Harper Collins Publishers. So, our first book is a classic. All of you have seen it, or heard it, or seen it, or heard it in some form. Is Little Red Riding Hood. So what we've been learning is that every time we read a fairy tale, it's different. Everybody has a different version. So let's see what his version is of Little Red Riding Hood. Let's see this comment. And Orlando starts school tomorrow. So Orlando, Florida, I wish that you have the best school year ever. Massachusetts starts school in 3 weeks or so. Oh, wow. They have a longer summer. Maybe they got out later than us. And Mike, I did get your email. Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a young girl who lived with her mother. She was sweet and kind and liked to believe in the good in everyone, like me. Her grandmother, who loved her the most, sewed a red hood and jacket for her. The girl wore it all the time, and soon everyone called her, guess, Little Red Riding Hood. One day, when her grandmother had fallen ill, Red Riding Hood's mother sent her to go visit her grandmother and bring her food. She packed a basket filled with cake and wine. Now, I had never heard that version, that there was wine. So there's that picture. But I know there's Little Red Riding Hood. Let's see. Hi, Miss Gimble and the Gimble crew. Have a happy first day of school tomorrow. Be careful, Red Riding Hood. Don't stray from the path. Through the forest, her mother warned. I won't, Mother, Red Riding Hood promised. If you go into the woods, you could trip and fall and break the glass. Then your grandmother would have nothing. I will stay on the path, Mother. Red Riding Hood said. Red Riding Hood set off and stayed on the path, walking quickly but steadily through the forest. After some time, she came upon a wolf who stood alongside the path. Why, hello, Little Red Riding Hood. Where are you off to in such a hurry? The wolf asked. To my grandmother's. She is sick. Red Riding Hood said, but she kept walking. And where does your grandmother live? The wolf asked. Along this path. I'm halfway there. Her house is in the clearing below the oak trees. Why are you in such a rush? It's a beautiful day. I bet you haven't even noticed the lovely flowers growing alongside the path. Surely your grandmother would want some flowers to brighten her day. Red Riding Hood stopped. She looked to either side of the path. There were indeed flowers in every color she'd ever seen or imagined. Red Riding Hood knew grandmother had been spending all day inside. She would appreciate some bright flowers to help her feel better. Red Riding Hood decided to pick only a few flowers. Then, if she just quickened her pace, she could arrive at grandmother's on time. The wolf, of course, had other motives. He saw this lovely little girl and couldn't help but think about how delicious she would be to eat. But a meal of her grandmother, too? Now that would be the finest feast he had had in ages. While Red Riding Hood, hi Terry Huff, while Red Riding Hood ambled through the wildflowers, the wolf raced ahead along the path. Sure enough, he spotted a house near the oak trees not much further away. He knocked gently 3 times. Is that you, Little Red Riding Hood? A small voice said from inside. I am too weak to answer the door. Please unlatch it and come inside. The wolf opened the door and walked into the grandmother's bedroom. Before she could manage to scream, the wolf swallowed her whole. After one loud belch, the wolf quickly put on the grandmother's nightgown and nightcap and climbed under the covers. So I see some comments coming in. Mike, an adult version of Little Red Riding Hood. How crazy. Yeah, because in ours, there was no adult beverages. Hi, Ava, Ari, and Pop Pop. Hello. So glad to see you guys. While Red Riding Hood searched for flowers, she kept seeing blooms more beautiful than what she had already had a little bit ahead of her. So soon she was deep into the forest. Oh no, she thought, I'm very late to visit grandmother. Red Riding Hood gently tucked the flowers into her basket and hurried back through the forest, finally finding the path. When she arrived at her grandmother's house, she was surprised to see that the door was already ajar. Grandmother, it's me. It's Little Red Riding Hood. I'm in here, a raspy voice answered. I've brought you cake and wine and flowers, Grandmother, Red Riding Hood said. She stopped at the edge of her bed. Still got some stuff going on here. Her grandmother had pulled her cap over her face and looked very strange. Why, Grandmother, what big ears you have. The better to hear you with, my dear. Why, Grandmother, what big hands you have. The better to grab you with, my dear. Why, Grandmother, what big hands you have. The better to grab you with, my dear. I repeated that. Why, Grandmother, what big teeth you have. The better to eat you with, my dear. The wolf leaped out of bed and lunged at Red Riding Hood, swallowing her whole. Soon after Red Riding Hood was eaten, a hunter passed by the window of grandmother's house. He saw the silhouette of the wolf on the bed and thought it looked very strange. So here's the wolf talking to Little Red Riding Hood. He walked through the open doorway and saw the wolf sleeping on the grandmother's bed. Finally, he said, the hunter had been tracking this mischievous wolf for years. Here's my chance to get you once and for all. He was ready to take aim and shoot the wolf, but then he realized that it might not be too late to save the old woman. He took his knife and sliced open the sleeping wolf. Thank goodness, Red Riding Hood cried as she gulped the fresh air. It was very frightening in there. The hunter helped free Red Riding Hood and her grandmother, then filled up the wolf's belly with large rocks. When the wolf woke up, he saw the hunter, child, and grandmother staring down at him. He stood up and tried to run at them, but the rocks inside him were so heavy that he collapsed on the floor dead. The hunter skinned the wolf and kept the pelt as a prize. The grandmother enjoyed her cake and wine and regained her strength. Little Red Riding Hood returned home safely and promised never to stray from the path again. Yes, Glenda McCrae said those are great illustrations. They are. They tell a story about themselves. Now for our second story. I heard this one a long time ago, and Carmelita Harris Daniels is laughing. So the next one that we're going to read is The Nightingale. I honestly kind of forgot about this one. I know it's a bird, but let's see. The Emperor of China had everything he ever needed or wanted. He had the most expensive clothes to wear, the finest art to admire, and the most beautiful treasures to show off. A soldier in his court, hi, Miss Eskew, a soldier in his court returned from a trip and told everyone about the most beautiful song he had heard. When the nightingale sang, it took my breath away, the soldier said. The emperor didn't believe him. His things were always the best, and this time would be no exception. Did it sing more magnificently than the loveliest voice in my court? So here's that book. And he said, the rocks in the belly. She said she's laughing at the rocks in the belly. Hello, Miss Grumble. How are you? And the Grumble family. And he said, from the hood. So here we go. The emperors ordered his most accomplished singer to sing her prettiest song. Yes, this bird's song was even more magnificent, the soldier said. Did it sing more beautifully than my prize bird? The emperor ordered his servant to bring his best bird from his aviary to sing for the court. Yes, this bird's song was even more beautiful. What is the name of this magical bird? The emperor asked. She is called the Nightingale. The emperor dismissed the men at once and demanded that he bring the nightingale to him. The soldier didn't know how to find the nightingale's home again. He asked everyone in the palace if they had heard of the bird. Only a man who had worked in the kitchen could tell him where the bird lived. They set out together. The soldier, the kitchen maid, and the members of the search party traveled into the woods. They tread carefully, not wanting to miss the sound of the nightingale. Listen, over there, someone in the search party said. Surely those notes belong to the nightingale. There's the nightingale. Well, not the nightingale. Oh, that is the nightingale right there. That is not just the bleat of a young lamb, the kitchen maid said. Oh, she said, that is just the bleat of a young lamb, the kitchen maid said. They kept walking. Yes, I hear it. That must be the sound of the bird near the stream, another said. That is just the chorus of frogs, the soldier said. They kept walking. Then they came upon the most beautiful song they had ever heard. The melody poured through the trees and danced in the air. It was light and moving and lovely. They all knew that this was the nightingale. Dear Nightingale, what can we give you that you might join us at the palace? They asked. The nightingale wanted nothing. She wanted to be free to sing and share her gift with as many people as possible. The nightingale came to the palace willingly and presented herself to the emperor. When the nightingale sang, he was delighted. Now he had every wonderful thing in China. He kept the nightingale in a cage and had her sing for every guest. He had her sing during dinner and in afternoons. Her songs were different every time she sang, but they were all beautiful. For the celebration of the emperor's birthday, he was presented with a bird made out of jewels. The jewel bird looked like the nightingale. He could wind up the bird and it could play a song. The song was very beautiful, and the emperor thought it might be more beautiful than the nightingale's. The emperor played the jewel nightingale over and over again. Soon he lost interest in the real nightingale. One night at dinner, he asked that the real nightingale be brought to sing against the jewel nightingale as a competition. After several rounds, the whole table was able to join in a familiar song of the jewel nightingale. They clapped and cheered and didn't ask the real nightingale to sing again. No one noticed the real nightingale escaping from her cage and flying out the open window. As time passed, the emperor grew older and became sick. He lay in bed, winding and rewinding his mechanical bird until one day he couldn't sing anymore. The bird was broken. The emperor sent for his real nightingale, whom he didn't know had disappeared years ago. We will find the finest jewelers and engineers and have them make you a new bird, his servant said. But the emperor wanted the real true nightingale back to sing for him. The rumor spread throughout the kingdom that the emperor was dying. As the nightingale flew through the forest, she overheard people talking about their poor emperor. Without hesitation, the nightingale flew to the palace and perched on the emperor's windowsill. The nightingale sang her best song yet. It was full of hope and love. Death was so moved by the display of affection, he decided to spare the emperor. Quickly, the emperor recovered, and he reigned for many more years with the nightingale in his court. The nightingale became his personal emissary. She flew around the kingdom and relayed information about what she saw and heard to the emperor. She remained the emperor's most prized possession. And look at this illustration. So here's my takeaways from both. So Little Red Riding Hood. Sometimes we get distracted by the path that we were placed on by God or whoever you believe in. You deviate from it because you think there's something better when he has a destination for you at the end. So sometimes we just have to keep focused, remember our goal, remember our focus, and keep our eyes set on that. Because I think if she would have did exactly what her mother told her and not talked to strangers and stayed on the path, that wouldn't have happened. And the rocks, Miss Daniels, would not have been involved. So let me read that sentence about the rocks again. Let's see. The hunter helped free Red Riding Hood and her grandmother, filled up the wolf's belly with large rocks. Well, he must have sewed them back up because he cut him open. But yes, that is funny. The nightingale, oh, the nightingale. Sometimes we think that we want something better than what we have, but what we actually have, no, let me say this. Sometimes the things that truly love us, we don't realize that it loves us back until it's too late and we lose it. And so he put his faith in something that couldn't help him, a jewel bird, because it was pretty. And he forgot the reason why he would have gotten that jeweled bird was because of the nightingale. And yeah, Mike said, don't forget the wine. And kids, never bring wine to your grandma. That's not a good idea because then things like this happen, just joking. So next week we have Rumpelstiltskin. And we have, Let's see what other story we'll read next Tuesday. These were short stories. The Seven Ravens. So those are the two fairy tales that I'll read next Tuesday. Remember, if nobody else tells you, Dr. George loves you. Oh, and I want to tell you this about the takeaways of that book, of these two books. There's a lesson in everything we read and see. Start paying attention because there's a lesson every single day. Rest well on purpose. Love you guys. Good night.